welcome to our next Empire Masterclass as we continue this educational masterclass series, which I know I've enjoyed for 2023. It's been building as we started this probably last year, 2022 into 2023, and we've already started the planning for 2024 as well. My name is Paul Jantz. Thanks for joining us. We're here thanks to Hall Chadwick's Professional Partners Education and our sponsors, Profit Master, Global Outsourcing, iKeep, and Lloyd's Auctions. Now, if you are joining us for the first time, just bear with me as I share a little bit about PPE or Professional Partners Education. We are a Hall Chadwick company, and we've built this to provide educational content back to you guys, our accounting network, our accounting community, something I've been in the industry now for, I don't know, it's ridiculous, probably 25 years, I think. But it's their content. There's call it our lunch and learn workshops, which we did last week, which is more on your technical, practical side. And then we've got these Empire Masterclasses as well, where we highlight a particular topic. I have a fantastic guest that comes on. We chat about a particular topic, and hopefully we provide all of you guys with some educational content, CPD that you can claim for. I know a number of firms hit me up for certificates and those sorts of things. So again, if you want that, please let me know. I'll always send you a certificate to show that you've actually attended one of these classes and claim the CPD. All the content after here goes into post-production and it then gets put up on our YouTube page. It's called PPE TV Plus. So if you jump into YouTube, type in Professional Partners Education, it's all there. You'll see all the content, past content last year, this year, and of course this show. I know there's a number of firms that couldn't join us that want the recording to this as well. So it's definitely a popular one. What else can I share with you? Now, I suppose I mentioned before with regards to me being in the industry for as long as I have been, and I've been coaching, training different accounting firms around the globe for a number of years now. And when the topic of, teams and people come up, it's a really interesting one. I don't believe any business, any firm, whether you, and I know I've got firms in Singapore watching this as well. So whether you're in Singapore or whether you're in the US, the UK, Australia, New Zealand, it doesn't matter. I believe that the people challenges are wherever they are in every business. So hopefully this is going to be a fantastic show that all of you guys can enjoy. I know, one, you want to attract better talent to your business. Two, I know you want to retain great people. And three, I've got no doubt you want to build a great culture. So they all work towards achieving the results that you want to achieve. And hopefully over the next hour or so, we'll be able to provide that to you. We're going to hopefully tick a few boxes around key things that we're going to work on, whether that's cultivating a positive culture, whether that's managing stress and preventing burnout, whether that's building resilience. I know, again, a lot of people throw out the word resilience, but what does it mean? How you work it into your business and your people, I think it's really important. I know all of you want to create an environment where people can thrive, because I believe that once you can do that and you can build those retention strategies, you'll have a healthy, happy team. And if all that works into play, knowing my coaching background as well, it goes towards increasing productivity. And I believe if you can increase productivity, you'll increase profitability. And I know we all want profitable businesses. So let's get into it. It's 12:05. We've got about 55 minutes. Look, if anyone does have questions, you've got the Q&A bar there as well. So throughout the sesh, if you've got questions, please throw them in there. I know we've got time at the end. We've got a lot to get through, but we've got time at the end to make sure that we will answer any question you may have. Let me introduce you to our guest, Casey Benjamin. Welcome to our masterclass. How are you?
Hi, Paul. Thank you so much for having me. And what an introduction. You are absolutely speaking my language. So I'm even more thrilled to be sharing some of this information with your community today, and very grateful for the opportunity.
Yeah, it is our absolute pleasure. I know, even whether it's Danielle, whether it's Taryn, shout out to those ladies as well. I know that's how I got to know about you. And I think you're right. Our connection was it was very good from day one, because I think we speak the similar language, and you're going to talk about, and we're going to hear things like the science behind energy levels, the science behind food, exercise, the importance of that, the facts, the data, all the sort of things that, when we talk about how you were built and how you were wired, I think are going to be really important aspects to share with everybody online. So everyone's in for a bit of a treat today, which is awesome. But before we do that, I might let you do a little intro about you, maybe share a little bit about you and your story to date, if that's okay.
Absolutely. My story today, it's a bit of a roundabout way. And whilst I was kind of going on my own journey, it sort of felt like I was a little bit lost. But in hindsight, as with many things, when I look back, I can see that all the signs were pointing to what I'm doing today. So everything's prepared me for that. So I've always been somebody that is interested and really fascinated by humans. What makes them tick? Why do we behave the way that we do? Why do we think that way? And why do we have different perspectives? And what causes conflict? And why are some people good at this and some people are better at that? And so, of course, when I discovered psychology in high school, I fell in love with it. And I went on to master in psychology. And I also studied sociology as well. So very much around that nature versus nurture debate. And I took that then into a master of teaching and applied all of my learnings with primary school children. So watching these beautiful, what I call balls of biology, because they're just so honest and they're just themselves when they're really young, and applying all of that learning to them. And I was really particularly fascinated in different intelligences and different learning styles and what made those children tick and how I could form that classroom culture to become a bit of an ecosystem and help each of those children to understand what their strengths were. And so now essentially I just kind of do that with adults, but I just think they're kids in suits. So really it's the same thing. We've all got an inner child within us, and we all still carry everything that we've gone through. And we are inherently ourselves as well. So in teaching, I burnt out and I ended up with chronic fatigue. And so I had to do a lot of work on my own health and well-being and learning what it was that was energy efficient for me, essentially. And I went and did some coaching training, and I found, although there were some fantastic models and things that really helped me to understand humans, I did find there was a bit of a one size fits all approach there that I got a little frustrated with. And so as I was talking about this, because I tend to share a lot with my friends and just dissect certain information and try to solve the world's problems, essentially, I was chatting to a friend about this, and she said, you should check out this epigenetics course that I did. And so I went and did some further training in that. And epigenetics, for those who haven't come across that term before, it's really about our genes and how our genes interact with the environment, as well as how the environment interacts with our genes. And so now I use all of that study that I've done, the psychology, the sociology, the teaching, the coaching, and the epigenetics to support a variety of clients, both in the corporate and the business world, to work smarter, not harder. And not only that, but to find purpose and meaning in their work and to be really cultivating that sense of flow and efficiency and effectiveness.
Well said. Well said. And a couple of key things in there was, well, again, that I can relate to. The old work smarter, not harder is something that, yeah, I've focused on for probably the last 10 years of my life. And you can always improve on it. There's no doubt about it. And I think that's the great part. I think everybody would like to be in that. Even when we were talking off air, just certain things, with a balance is so important to work smarter. And we're going to touch on all of that today, which is going to be fantastic. Now, let's get into the problem. Let's address some of the problems at hand for all of you guys that are listening to this. And I know there's more firms that have just jumped on, so it's fantastic to see all of you guys that are interested. So thank you again for being a part of this. Now, we know staff retention and attracting people at the moment are really hard. I know it's forced. I mentioned Profit Master, great friends of PPE. Again, they're an offshoring company. We're being forced to go down that road because it's very hard, one, to find them, two, to retain them as well. We know sometimes you feel like you're banging your head against a brick wall. And, that's because some of the employee demands are increasing. You feel like sometimes you're not getting much in return. And I think, again, this probably comes about, I'm a little bit older with a bit of gray hair here. So the new gen coming through is and again, I feel they're more demanding. I know I've got a 13, 11-year-old and 8-year-old. I think they're going to be more demanding in the future as well. So it is going to be interesting as our children grow up. But it's also tough to find quality staff here in Australia. So this all means that we've got challenges that we need to navigate through, and sometimes can be confusing as well. So navigating through the challenges and how you use them to your advantage are going to be really, really important. How you become an employer of choice is going to be really important. But let's go back to the heading. And I suppose the heading of this particular one was how you become an employer of choice. So, Casey, my first question is, what does it mean to be an employer of choice? It's a term that can be overused quite a bit. So are you okay to go into a little bit of detail about that and define what employer of choice in a meaningful way?
Absolutely. Yeah, it is. And I agree with you, Paul. It's a term that is overused. It's thrown around a lot. It's underexplained. It's misunderstood. And so we really want to have a look at, first and foremost, what does that actually mean? And, I agree with you. Like, the employees that we're having come through now, there's a huge difference. And it really wasn't that long ago that things were done very differently. It was just a matter of, you get a job to pay the bills, and that's basically it. And you're very grateful for that job. And things are changing a lot now, so when we're talking about employer of choice, we're talking about, well, why would someone choose to work with you? What is your EVP, or your employee value proposition? And I know that can be frustrating for some people to think about that, because it's like, well, they should be grateful for this work. And yes, there is that. And I understand that that's very different to how things have been done in the past. But this is the reality of the situation, that we do have employees coming through with much higher demands. People are changing, humans are evolving, and so there are differences. We also have a lot more choices on hand now as to what we could potentially do with our time, and there's that famous quote by Annie Dillard: how we spend our days is, of course, how we spend our lives. And it's 90,000 hours of work on average is what we spend over our lifetime at work. So, we need to take that into consideration. And during COVID, especially, in places where there was a lockdown, that great pause, that gave people the opportunity to reflect and to think more carefully about what was really important. When we stripped everything back and we weren't able to necessarily go out and socialize and do certain things, people really got clear on what was important to them. And it was really an opportunity for people to think about what was meaningful for them. And so, it's, people are really looking for work more than just to pay the bills. They're looking for it to be purposeful and meaningful for them. Sometimes it can be a sense of belonging for them. It can be linked to their identity. People want a meaningful way to contribute. And there is a big difference between employer mindset versus employee mindset. I've been on both ends of the spectrum as well, so I can see that. And there is, and we'll get to this a little bit later, there is a big biological difference between why people work and what drives them to do certain jobs and what they get from their work as well. So that can be very, very different for the individual. And that's really what I'd love to bring to employers, to help them understand those biological differences so that they can provide that opportunity for the person, for the employee to get that meaning that they're looking from their work, and then in return get the best from their staff as well.
Yeah, well said, well said. And you mentioned a EVP, so an employee or employer?
Employee value proposition. Yeah.
Employee value proposition. Look, just to make it a bit interactive as well, if anyone online has an EVP, do you want to just throw it in the comment section? I'd love to see what you guys have, and even just sharing. Do you believe is that a hard thing to create, an EVP?
Do I believe that personally?
Yeah.
I think, I mean, the way that I look at things and the way that we educate people, I think it can be a time-consuming task, but there are definitely, when you understand the science behind why people work the way that they do, it can be something that is much clearer and much easier to actually create. So I think with regards to the constraints that we have as business owners as well, that can be where the challenge is as well. And that's where we have to sort of have discussions and compromises and things like that. But, like with any journey that we go on in life, there's always room for improvement. So as long as there's progress, and I think as long as staff are seeing that progress, and also a big part of it, and we'll get into this as well, is helping your staff to feel heard as well, letting them have a voice as well. So that can be, the EVP can be an opportunity, and that can be developed with staff as well.
Yeah, it's a good point. So I don't know many firms many businesses that would have an EVP. So it's probably a new type of language probably over the last few years, and how you can bring that in. I know I've heard of it a number of times, but I know we don't have an EVP. So it's interesting to how businesses go about developing that, and then how they use that as well. I think can be very powerful.
Absolutely.
So why would a company choose to be an employer of choice? Let's go back to that for a second.
Great question. There's so many benefits. So number one, you talked about retaining your good staff as well. So we want those staff to be able to realize their full potential. That's really what makes them happy and healthy at work, when they're able to feel like they can live to their strengths. They will then achieve better productivity. And we don't want it to just be a higher productivity. We want it to be a sustainable productivity, that it's going to be something that they can maintain over a long period of time. Okay, so we want that sustainable and aligned performance, that it's something that's within their strengths and their genius zone, because that's really what will help people to feel that sense of flow when they're at work. Another benefit being that it helps you to attract high quality staff. So, I know that there's a lot of costs that are spent on actually attracting staff. So if you can be an employer of choice, then, and have that really enticing EVP, then when people are choosing between different companies, perhaps they're offering similar salaries, they're going to be looking at the next benefits that are there, right? And they're going to choose the one that meets their needs as well. And we know that individuals, they're very different. So we need to meet a variety of needs as well there. Then, of course, the cost of staff turnover. So, as soon as you lose a staff member, there's quite a high cost that is involved with that. So reducing anything that we can do to reduce that cost is wonderful. So if you're able to retain your good employees, and then by becoming an employer of choice, you can turn those good employees into great ones, that can be a very rewarding experience as well. So it's not just about saving that money, but it is about, I have seen a number of people that I've worked with, really embracing that ability to mentor their people and to support them, and that can be incredibly meaningful for the employer as well. It also has amazing benefits for the reputation of the company as well. So being an employer that people want to work for, and that people are talking about in a positive way and are recommending. We know that people talk. So as they're talking, you want them to be saying, oh, this is a fantastic company to work for. And so having those potential employees coming to you rather than having to seek them out as well. So, it's not just as a means of attracting staff, it's as a means of attracting customers as well. I know I've certainly not purchased at a place because they don't treat their staff well. So it's, I'm not wanting to give them more money. So customers will make decisions based on that as well, and not only that, by going through the process of becoming an employer of choice, you're going to improve your business outcomes as well. So you're going to get that better quality of work. So really it's a win-win. And you were talking about this before, Paul. It's a win-win. When your staff are happy and healthy, your business is able to thrive. And we're really addressing the root cause of some of the problems that come up, and stop our businesses from functioning as well as they could be.
Yeah, well said again. And I think there's again, we can all, and I think we all have experienced that when an employer is not treating, or we hear it through various platforms or ways, or just listening to the way that people are sometimes spoken to. And again, we can sort of look at that and go, well, is that the way that I want to, would someone be recommending business? Exactly what you said before. If I heard them speaking to their people like that, and I was actually with a firm up in Queensland only last week, and they were commenting about, and it was a builder, mind you, but the fact is that the way that the builder speaks to his people is disgraceful, and they wouldn't recommend him in the future because of that. So that's exactly what you said, you know. So again, and you wonder why these people aren't turning up and they're maybe 6 months behind on a project. It's not rocket science. People don't like to be treated like that.
Exactly.
I think, and if you've got, you know, I think again, there's other businesses then might look at it and say, well, why have I got this high turnover of people constantly? Again, you sometimes got to look in the mirror and start looking at what you're actually doing and how you're doing and how you change that.
Yeah.
So I think we've covered the what, the why. Let's talk about the you know, the how. So how does a company become an employer of choice? Is there a 2, 3, 4, 5-step process that you can take everyone through?
I can definitely share what I would recommend with regards to this. And, you know, I think to summarize it just even in one point, really, it's about having a conversation with the staff that you have. So understanding what employees really want, okay? And through that conversation, and whether it be, you know, I know that there can be time constraints and things like that. So even a survey, some kind of questionnaire, and I've got a resource that I can share with you that can support the companies and your audience with this as well. Through asking your staff what they really want, it gives them a voice and it shows them that you care. And I think it was Maya Angelou who said, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And that really rings true with this. And it can just simply be through that conversation that people can feel valued, and that will have amazing benefits for their productivity anyway, just in knowing that they're heard. So after having that conversation, what you really want to be doing is meeting their needs in a personalized way. And this can be where the nuance can come in. And so even where we can, like the example that you gave before, Paul, of people talking, you know, to their staff in a way that, you know, is disrespectful, that might, I know there are extremes with regards to that, but there are even nuances in terms of how we can speak to our staff. Often we will treat other people how we want to be treated. But, you know, the platinum rule there, on top of, I know that's a golden rule, but the platinum rule is to treat others how they want to be treated. And there's a biological way of this. So you will know it. There'll be some people here in the room that would love a really detailed list of instructions presented in a really orderly fashion, and right down to really succinct details. And then there will be some people that will just want summarized points, you know, and they'll want some creative control. There will be some people that just want to do things their own way and learn through that. So there are nuances and there are differences, and there is a biological underpinning to this as to how people want to be treated. And that's why it's important to meet people's needs in a personalized way. And so then once you're doing that, you want to be able to support them to not only achieve high performance, but as I was saying before, aligned, purposeful and sustainable performance. So you want them to not only be working in their strengths, you know, at their highest potential, but to be able to maintain that for a long period of time, because you're going to get much better out of them, and then you're going to reduce that possibility that you're going to have a high staff turnover there. And then it comes to the environment. So creating a supportive environment that is going to maximize that forward moving growth and productivity. Okay, so this is where we really talk about culture as well. So those would be, I guess, my summarized points. When we get down into the nitty gritty, it can be really nuanced and complex, but understanding the science behind that can make it a lot more simplified.
Yeah, well said. And I think, look, the challenge today as well for employers out there, and I think, you know, these types of shows as well, we tend to have firms with team members in boardrooms as well. So it's interesting if we've got team members joining this as well. Although there's a lot of, you know, we've moved towards I've got my phone over there, but we've moved towards apps now. We've moved to a lot more electronic, cloud-led, call it surveys or whatever we want to do. But at the same time, the one thing that I wrote down before was having conversations. So while there's some great products out there that could automate what you're doing out there to ask questions, it still comes down to having the conversation with your people. So you personalize it. I think that's such an important one. So if there's one thing you take away, you know, and I always used to ask my firms, I used to do this, call it a self-assessment. I'd say, well, you tell me where are you on a scale of 0 to 5 with the connection you have with your people? How are you just behind a computer, and do you rate yourself as a 2 out of 5, or do you actually go to them and you make it yourself available, make yourself present, but also are you connected in asking questions, finding out about them? How are they feeling? How do you do that? And that's the great thing about sometimes call it a self-reflection or a self-assessment, that you can actually easily do that. Everyone can do that right now and say, how well do I do that? And how can I get better at that?
Absolutely. Yeah. And you can even ask your staff in regards to that, because there will be differences in terms of how much conversation your staff want from you. You know, we've got our introverts, and this is just the tip of the iceberg. You know, we've got our introverts that really just want to be left alone most of the time, you know, and then the extroverts will need a lot more support as well. So, you know, I know it sounds obvious to say, you know, have a conversation with them, but so often, and I'm guilty of this as well, we make assumptions based on people. We think people want the same as us, and sometimes we do. If we're surrounding ourselves with people that are similar to us, sometimes they do want the same thing as us, but often they don't. And that's why I've got, you know, the resource that has some suggested questions that will help those people to think, like, ask the questions that they might not have even thought of before, because we're all limited by our own perspective as well, you know, and, you know, they probably don't have the time to put into researching which questions should I be asking my staff as well. So let's make it easy for you, okay? And I think also, like, the ultimate way to have this conversation and to support your staff, like particularly on a biological level, and we can go more into that, is really understanding who they are, how they are wired. Because as often as most people, I find, if they're pretty in tune with themselves, they will know what they want. But sometimes when you ask these questions, you might get a blank face back, you know, and they might say, I don't really know. I don't really know what I want from work, or I don't know what would make it better for me here, or, you know, that would improve my relationships, or that would improve my productivity, or how I want to be spoken to. These might not be things that people have thought of before, and that's why we educate on that as well. But there was a really interesting some research that was done, conducted by YouGov, that was commissioned by PricewaterhouseCoopers as well, that surveyed staff about what they want. And it was fascinating for me to look at this as well, because I can see the biological underpinnings of it as well. So, you know, there is a lot to be said for people knowing who they are and knowing what they want as well. So I'm happy to share, if we've got time, some of that data that came from that report, if that's okay.
100%. If we've got time, let's come back to that.
Yeah.
And the funny part is, and I'll give you an example, and to everyone listening to this as well, it's an example of working with a firm up in Brizzy, like I mentioned last week. The previous month, we'd approached them and said, look, as we move into a new calendar year, we'd like to give back to you guys about, there's 4 senior people. What's the key things that you guys would like to learn to get better? So not just what we're doing internally, because we're doing a fair bit internally, but if there was external help, what would that look like? And back to your point, Casey, they didn't know. It's probably the first time that they've been asked that. They said, oh, we've never been asked that before. I said, that's okay. So do you think you can do some research, give some thought to it, and say, right, if I wanted to improve, what does that look like? And we didn't put any barriers on it. So we just said, look, you guys do some research, you come back to us. And you're right, we got 3 different, from the 4 people, we got 3 different answers to what they would like to do and where they'd like to go with that. And they'd done the research, they looked at the course, they sent us the links, they sent us the investment. They said, oh, look, sort of one of them's really expensive, but I'm happy to pay for half of it if you guys are happy to pay for half. Something is starting this, what you said before, a conversation. And it was amazing how they left, and they were because we caught up later for a team activity and dinner, and they were actually quite pumped that it even been, 1, they were asked, 2, it was accepted in terms of, right, how is this going to work and what's it going to give you in the future? Little things can make a big difference.
Yeah, sometimes it's the simplest thing, you know, but we overcomplicate things as humans.
So let's go back to the employee. So what do they really want, and how do we find that out?
Yeah, so having a conversation with your staff or your employers, if there's staff on the call, is going to be the best way to do it. If you can bring in a third party, like our company, that can help really as well, because you've got that middle person that can facilitate that conversation and also present the science behind it, that is going to really take away any kind of judgment or personal feelings, or just at least diminish that. But the study that YouGov did conduct, the research that they conducted, did shed quite a bit of light on it. So, the number one thing that people are wanting, remuneration and reward. So we're talking salary and financial incentives. That was 25%. That was the first priority for them. Okay. So we know, we've got a cost of living crisis at the moment. This study was conducted in 2021. So, it was during a time that, people were focused on security. And we know that is going to be, we require financial security to meet our basic needs. So that's always going to be important. But if we take the example as to where, you might have a potential staff member looking at two different places as to where they might work, and if the salary is similar, then what are the next things that they're going to look at? And we found that 22% of people then listed well-being as the next most important thing, or the most important. That was the most important thing for many people. So that was talking about physical and mental well-being. I would like to add one more on there and include emotional well-being as well, because that's something that we forget to talk about, and that can be a big barrier to a lot of success in organizations as well. And with regards to well-being, there was a focus here on work-life balance as well. So after salary and financial incentives, the most important thing to your employees is, on the whole, well-being. So that was 22%. And then the next one after that was their experience. So that might be of their role. So looking at, does it align with their strengths? It's their experience of the culture of the organization, the relationships within that organization, the diversity of the team, and that can be on all different regards, the team spirit and the energy of the co-workers, and that came in at 16% as a priority for people. So that's up there. That's important. And then the next one was ways of working. So having flexibility and autonomy. And I can see as I go through these, I can see the biological underpinnings. There are people that want more autonomy, and there are people that want more directions. And there is a reason behind that in terms of the biology. Again, we'll get into it later. That one, ways of working, was 12%. And then at 11% was career development. So that opportunity to learn and to upskill, programs that allow them to study, leadership support, feedback, coaching, different career pathways and different opportunities. So that came in at 11%. And then the next one was the brand. So the values of the brand and the prestige of the brand. And the amount of social responsibility that brand is taking, and whether the values are shared. So I know especially in the coaching world as well, Paul, you would know, we put a lot of emphasis on values and mission and, vision and all that kind of thing. But in terms of when we were looking at the workers, that came in at 8%. So it is still a priority, but it's lower down on the priority list for them as well. And then the last one at 5% was the workspaces and places. So the actual physical working environment, and it could be like the perks and equipment and things like that. And when you think about how much money we spend on, the actual workspaces, and, I've been at places that, have ping pong tables and pool tables and, beer on tap and, all sorts of different things there. There's a lot of money that goes into that. But it's very interesting that when we ask staff, after salary and financial incentives, well-being is the most important thing to them.
Very, very interesting. Look, I'm not surprised that salary and financial incentives, I think you mentioned, was right up there. Yeah. Do you have any advice for our listeners? The two I want to sort of jump on is maybe salary and financial incentives. I don't have tea as well. And how they plan for this, how they budget for this, because our industry's always been led by a multiple of salary. So keeping that at an interesting level, but What's your advice on how we go about doing that and planning for this and budgeting for this and then having that conversation back? And then I'll come back to well-being and work-life balance on what you think we can provide as well.
Yeah, I can pretty much fast track it to that second question, Paul, because I would be jumping out of my own lane if I were to try to give any advice with regards to planning financially for that. It is definitely not my area of expertise, and I feel that I would be telling people how to suck eggs. I know my strengths, and I'm definitely going to stay in my own lane around that one. So when it comes to salary and financial incentives, you would probably be able to do a much better job of advising people than than I would about that. So yeah, my expertise is really around well-being.
Talk to me about well-being then. So in terms of
Yeah.
well-being and work-life balance, what advice could you provide to everyone?
Yeah, my biggest tip is to ensure that your staff's well-being is taken care of in a personalized way. So, I know, again, there's not a lot of time to research all of the different opportunities and options out there for well-being programs. So, people can put in like an EAP, that employee assistance program, but it'd be worth sort of looking at how well utilized is that, because I know those programs can be really expensive. People will say, oh, let's get some workshops in around well-being, and let's get yoga. And I know that there have been companies that just sent all of their employees a $200 pair of runners and things like that. And this is probably not what they want to hear, but I would really encourage them not to waste their time and energy and money on blanket style programs or band-aid solutions, and do something that actually works. This is time that will be taken away from your staff working, and you working as well. So do something that's really going to have a full benefit and is actually going to address the root cause here. And this is why I say, it's got to be a personalized program, whether it be, ours or somebody else's, but just make sure it's personalized, make sure it's taking into account the DNA of your staff, the biology of your staff, and it's catering to their needs and to their desires and what is really going to help them to thrive so that your business can thrive.
Yeah, look, I would agree with you in that personalized way. So if we are going to understand the DNA around that, how do we go about understanding the biology of that behind each individual?
Yeah. So I can give you a pretty much like basic sort of little science 101 lesson, biology 101 lesson here, if that's
Love
okay.
Love it. It's my favorite subject at high school.
Fantastic. I agree. It's very fun. So we have to go back to embryology and to understand how people formed in the womb. So all of us as an embryo, we have 3 different dermal layers that develop. So there's the ectoderm, the mesoderm, and the endoderm. But depending on the environment within the womb, those layers didn't develop evenly. So there'll be 1 or 2 that are more dominant, okay? And this has a huge influence on our individuality. So yes, humans, we're all of the same species, but you only have to take a walk down the street or look around the office to realize we're all different. We're all different heights. We're all different breadths. We all have different face shapes and characteristics, brown eyes, blue eyes, like skin tone, hair texture, all of those different things. And that's just the surface level. That's just what we can see. But there's so much that's different in the terms of how we use our brains and what hormones actually drive us. So when you've got 1 or 2 of those dermal layers that are more dominant, that creates what we call somatotype. So that's one of the sciences that is within the tool that we use. The tool that we use integrates 15 different layers of science. So we're looking at, chronobiology, embryology, neuropsychology, a whole bunch of different things. And it puts that information together so that you get a very succinct and detailed understanding of who a person is on a biological level and what they need. So that can be everything from food and exercise that's going to be best to them, to their chronobiology, which means their own personal rhythm. So the tip of the iceberg around that is, you've got your early birds and your night owls, right? So understanding how somebody works and when they're most productive, you can utilize that information to allow them that flexibility in a way that's going to work for them, so that they're in meetings at a time that they're going to be able to contribute the most. They're doing their most focused work at a time that they are best able to concentrate. They're multitasking at the time that they are best able to multitask. If they need to plan, they're able to plan, or if they are more of a prioritizer, then they'll do that. So everything that is happening back in the womb has an influence on which are our most dominant organs, which are the most dominant areas of our brain. We all use all parts of our brain, but there's some that light up more for different people, and that's where you get that difference with skills and strengths and talents and abilities. And then there's the hormones as well. So hormones have a huge influence on why we do the things that we do, what we're seeking. So there are some people, and I bet we'll have quite a few of these people on the call, that are more sensitive to dopamine, and they've got more dopamine receptors. So they're able to work for longer periods of time, and they're able to focus for long periods of time. And they get such a rush from completing a task and achieving something and being able to progress that it fuels them on to do the next thing. Okay. And so then when you've got somebody like that is trying to motivate somebody else, they're only able to come from their own perspective. And so they're going to expect that person to work the same way as them and to be rewarded and motivated by the same things. But that person might be somebody who is seeking serotonin. They might have lower serotonin. So they're wanting to do things in a bit of a different way. They might need lots of information and time and space, and it might need to be pleasurable, and their environment might be impacting them on a very deep level. So we have all these kind of differences. You'll see that there are people with regards to hormones, you'd probably put a lot of those people in a sales role. They might like that fast-paced, unstable kind of environment, and they love the win. So, you would use that biology to have that person in a role that's appropriate for them and that is going to allow them to feel like they are contributing in a meaningful way for them. And then understanding all those different kinds of hormones at play within an organization. When you understand the science behind it and your staff understand this, judgment tends to fall away, and then we can understand, that person does that because they're driven by this hormone, or they're using the prefrontal cortex of their brain, or they're always commenting on how nice I look because they're a visual person. They're using the occipital part of their brain, so I can understand. It allows that, fosters that understanding, and it can bring people together. And so I've seen this a lot with the clients that we've worked with as well. So where there was tension previously in teams, that tension is able to fall away because suddenly they understand why that person behaves the way that they do. And I mean, let's face it, humans are weird. We're very, very strange creatures. And, often we find that other people are more weird than us because we've been living in our perspective and our brain and with our hormones for a long period of time. So yeah, it can really allow that judgment to fall away. And it can allow people to really thrive. So coming back to the strengths and the talents and things like that, I've had great success with helping people that were previously thinking about leaving a position because they had lost their confidence and they didn't really know their value, and they were trying to behave in a way that everybody else was behaving whilst neglecting their own unique strengths. Through that coaching process and helping them understand their biology, I've been able to help them to move on to things that they didn't even think that they were able to do. So, one person in particular had this dream of becoming partner in an accounting firm, and didn't really understand their own strengths, but when they were pointed out, once they could see the science behind it, you could just see this person light up and become really engaged and start to have ideas about what they could bring to the company, and they have now achieved that partner status, and it has been beautiful to just watch them really thrive. And feel that sense of fulfillment and meaningful contribution that they were seeking in their work. And that's just one example of how we might be losing our best staff, and they might not be performing at the level that you want, and a lot of that is because they don't understand what their own value is.
Great points. Great points. And I like that example of the person who was probably on their way out and suddenly they've turned that around to be a partner of the firm, which is interesting, isn't it? And
Yes.
it's just sort of breaking it down. The hardest part is that we provide a lot of information in this, and I'm just going to try and break something down because something you said triggered to me. And I'm a morning person. I'm a massive morning person. I'm not a afternoon person at all. If anything, I'm looking for a nano nap at about 3 o'clock in the afternoon. That's my low time, 3 to probably 4 o'clock. But I'm a big morning person. And when I ran a sort of bigger business years and years and years ago, that was one of the things. I'd always be at the office early. And I used to tell people, guys, I'm at the office early. And we started having that conversation to, well, why are you at the office so early? Why can you do 8 hours in 2 hours? 8 hours working 2 hours? Because that's my prime time. You know, I learned that. But then I started talking to my team about the flexibility that they would like to learn. And then probably what's their prime time? Is it the afternoon? Are they night owls? Do they prefer to start at 12 and finish at 8? Did I really care? No. So we started talking to our team about what hours would they like to work to complete the task at hand. To be fair, I just said to them, look, it's not that I don't care. Don't take me the wrong way, but I don't really mind. That's why I changed my language. It's not that I don't care. It's about that I don't mind what hours you work, because I want you to perform at the best time for you. That will get us the best result. If that means you start at 12 and finish at 8, great. If that means you got the morning to go surfing, great. It is all about having that conversation as opposed to that scattergun approach. So I sort of bucked the trend a little bit and thought, well, why is everything 9 till 5? What, just because it's in a contract? And I thought that was just poor. So I sort of changed that, and every single person that started, I actually tell them, we work to what hours you would like to work, not the business hours. We've always got business hours, but at the end of the day, what's the best hours that you would like to work? And it's an interesting conversation to have with people when you do that.
And I think if anybody just wanted to kind of dip their toes in with that, following your lead on that, Paul, would be a fantastic way to do. Just have that conversation around the hours that people want to work. Do they know when they're most productive? Do they have an idea of that? You know, have they ever been given that choice before? You know, I think you'd find most people will have an idea as to when is their most productive hours. But it's giving people permission to be themselves at work as well. Yeah, you know, and we can also benefit from that. So
spot on. I know I was going to use the term a voice, which is true. You know, I know we've just come off the last weekend, but it's giving people the opportunity to say, yeah, look, I'm not sure, but I think I'm better in the morning. Actually, I'm better in the afternoon. And you start having the conversation with your employees, your people, who I've always seen as my number one asset. If I haven't got people to serve clients, I don't have clients. So how do you get your people better to service your clients? And I think it is about understanding them and then giving them the opportunity to say, well, what else would you like? What does this look like? It's not a golden ball of, you know, it's not just going to happen, but how can we work towards that? You know, so I think there's little things there. I agree. There's little things in there that everyone can just take away. And maybe that is a starting point. I'm not sure. Yeah. That's for people to sort of think about themselves. Before we go to questions, and I know there's a couple coming through. I just saw one just then from Kate. So we'll actually get to that in a second, Kate. Do we want to quickly touch on some of the data that you mentioned before? What have we got? We've got 10 minutes. So maybe if we can touch on that, and then we'll come to some questions. So if you do have any questions, if I can get this out properly, if you have any questions, the great thing about live, isn't it? Throw them into the Q&A and we'll definitely have time for them. But do we want to touch on some of that data that you mentioned as well?
The data was just what I've already gone through in terms of the YouGov report that was done in terms of the percentages as to what people were wanting. So yeah.
Okay. Cool.
We can skip straight to questions. Let's go for it.
Let's go for it. Okay. Hi, Paul and Casey. I'm interested in ways. Do you recommend measuring engagement and well-being? So we do an annual survey and we use NPS. However, have looked at other software ways of gaining insights, and I'm interested in what tools you would have to suggest. Thanks, Kate.
That's a great question. Yes, I would recommend measuring engagement. I do find that's a tricky one. So I haven't done a lot of research into those kinds of surveys. I know that Everperform had some fantastic tools there that people could use. So I'm happy to make an introduction to them. But any kinds of surveys to, as we said before, giving a voice to your staff will be really beneficial. We do track in our programs in terms of we use the DAS21, so looking at depression, anxiety, and stress scores with regards to people's well-being, but we also add on physical and emotional tracking with regards to that. And so what we kind of look at is more in terms of the precursors to things like presenteeism and absenteeism. So we look at what's the stress and anxiety and the depression. And so we see when we implement the insights from our program, we see some very quick results, and usually those that are really in a severe case will have the most quick results and the benefits, because there can be some big turnarounds with regards to that. In terms of engagement, I'm curious to know how well that can be measured, and I don't have a lot of information on that. So perhaps if we can be introduced, that would be great, because I'd love to find out as to ways to measure that engagement.
Yeah, brilliant. And look, there are some bits of software that are out there at the moment as well that can measure that sorts of things, and that's probably the one thing that I'd like to say with that is, while there are some great things out there, there's nothing more, or there's nothing better than exactly this, having that conversation that we spoke about before, the ability to have that conversation and engage with your people in a proactive manner. I've always been a big fan of, unfortunately, the industry that we live in is a rear mirror type of industry. So we're always looking in the back, but you've got with people, you can always look forward. How do you even develop a strategy to stop your annual performance reviews? How do you, so again, you're looking backwards. Most people can't remember what they did last week, let alone the last 12 months. So how do you develop a new strategy to be proactive, to say, right, you know what, guys, let's chat about this. Let's talk about the pros, the cons, what we like, what we don't like, what we can stop, what we can continue, and do a simple little matrix around that, and then have a conversation over what would we replace that with, and empower your people to come up with maybe an answer. We sometimes, as the leaders, we think we've got to come up with everything. You know what, guys? We don't. But we can go and ask our people, and then, we might lead them. Good people can lead conversations as well, and then you get the same result that you're looking for, as opposed to telling. I think as parents, we tend to think we've got to tell. You know what? Go the other way and ask questions. A lot better.
Yeah, it's far more empowering. Great point, Paul. Yeah,
that would be my advice on that one as well. And here's it's from Anonymous. I was about to say, oh, that's an interesting name, but it's anonymous. Casey, great session. Can you recommend a couple of books? I'm a big fan of books as well. Resources that can, on the issue.
Yes, I do. That's a great question. I would recommend Blueprint by David Plum, I think it is. That's sort of really looking, if you like the science and the study behind individuality, I'd be looking at that one. I do tend to get, I listen to a lot of podcasts, I read a lot of books, and because of it's a bit of a double-edged sword here. With the information that I have on bio-individuality, I get frustrated with the lack of personalization. And I know it's part of giving those little takeaways and the tip of the iceberg. But I'm always looking for, like, well, what if we put an epigenetics lens over that, and what if we looked at that study through the bio-individuality of different people? So Blueprint would be my number one recommendation to go further into this topic. Yeah.
I've not that I've read Blueprint, but I've heard Blueprint being brought up a few times with regards to the science. And I think, again, if you're interested in that next layer of the science, I think, yes, I've just written it down as well. It's something to add to the list. I've got about 3 going. I usually have about 3 going at once. I'm not quite sure why. I haven't been able to work that one out. But I enjoy the bit of just picking this one up and going to that one and trying to create new things from reading different books. But I'm not an audio person. I can't do audio. So it's interesting.
See, every man for himself, isn't it? Or like each to their own. That's the better one. That's the one
Yeah,
I was looking for.
but
We're all different.
I love the feel of it. I love the turning of the page. I love the
Yes.
underlying. I love the fact that so it's interesting, the different psyche.
Yeah, the way that we process information. I always have to do, hard note taking, that helps me,
Yep.
So yeah, again, there's a biological underpinning. We need to move it through our body. So it's a kinesthetic thing. Yeah. Another person I know Dr. Bruce Lipton is talked about a lot within the field of epigenetics. I think he often takes it to quite a sort of esoteric place as well there. So if you're interested in that, that might be another good spot to look.
Brilliant. Now, as we're looking to wrap up, any final words from yourself? I know you mentioned to me there's a template possibly that you got that you can send to everyone as well.
Yep. So I've made a spreadsheet because I know there's probably a few people on here that like a spreadsheet. So there's some questions on there that can facilitate that discussion with your staff. And I've utilized the work from the YouGov study, and I put some epigenetics questions in there as well that can help to facilitate that conversation as well. So yeah, that's there for you. But thank you so much, Paul, for having this. I'm going to say it's a courageous conversation because these are different topics, and it is really going to the heart of the matter as to what some of those challenges are. So thank you for being brave and for having this conversation with me, and thank you to everybody who's come along today and those amazing questions at the end. And feel free to connect with me if you've got any further questions.
So good point. How do people connect with you? What's the best way?
Yep. So they can email me, hello@thecourageproject.com.au. The website, thecourageproject.com.au, is there as well, or Casey Benjamin on LinkedIn.
Perfect. So check out Casey, connect with her, find out as much information as you can. I think, again, I love having these conversations because, again, to everybody online, thank you to you and congratulations to you for coming online and trying to make a difference to your business, trying to make a difference to your people. Sort of whether, again, Kate sort of doing what she's doing, you're better off doing something than doing nothing. And I think that's what I always say that to a number of the firms that I work with. Something you can build on, nothing you can't build on. Okay, so always think about that. And this may be a starting platform to all of you that say, right, how do I learn more about this? How do I get better at this? The template, I will definitely reach out to all of you guys in the next 24 hours and send that to you. Casey's going to send that to me. I'll send it to you guys. It's probably an opt-in, so just reply when I send you an email. When I ask you if you'd like to receive it, let me know, and then I will send it to you. But yeah, look, thanks, Casey. Look, it's always fantastic having different people share different topics, and this is a really good one because I know I haven't met too many businesses and firms around the globe that I've been working with that don't want to become an employer of choice or build an exceptional workplace, whatever it may be. And I think all the little things, and that's the great part about this. So this will be up on our YouTube page pretty soon when it comes out of post-production, probably next week. So jump online, look at it again, review it. If you've taken notes, review it and work out what's next. What can you start doing? Doesn't need to do everything. You don't need to do everything. And obviously the spreadsheet will help you as well, the template, but start doing something. That'll be my recommendation. Just a quick one. I have put together my next masterclass only probably in the last 24 hours. So I think it is on the 21st of November. It's probably going to be our last one for the calendar year. It's ridiculous that we're so close to the end of the year, another year. And we're going to be talking about the cyber tech space. So I've got a panel. So I've put together a panel for everybody that wants to join us to, again, the financial services accounting world is probably the one or two industries that are constantly being targeted by cyber criminals. And I've decided to bring not just one or two, I've got 3 different experts that is going to join me as a part of a panel. And we're going to talk about that and give you guys a fantastic masterclass on cyber and tech and what you can do moving forward. Again, building another strategy into your business. So join us for that. It's on the 21st of November. You'll get an invitation anyway. Don't worry about it. But I thought I'll just share that with you. I think that's about it. Casey, thank you again. Thanks for all of your insights, your thoughts. I look forward to receiving the spreadsheet and then sending that out to everyone. 101, we've done well.
Thank you so much. Thanks so much for having me.
Fantastic. Thanks, Casey. And to all you guys, signing off till I see you next time. Enjoy the rest of your day and the rest of your week. Thank you. See ya.